welcome back. We are tearing apart the Honda MUV700, the smoking dude itself, and it's really not that bad of a job. This one's getting a whole new top end, and we're gonna go through that. Now you can see here I've already pulled just part of the top structure. It's just the seats and the seat frames have been pulled off, and the little back piece of plastic that goes through there, and this plate which runs here. It's where the e-brake and stuff goes. And there's the piece of plastic back here is the one that has the 12-volt adapter on it. Yes, there's ice everywhere. Yes, it is cold. Our next piece we're going to pull is actually going to be this. So there is 2 pinch bolts, two on each side, and then a couple of these support pieces where it ties into the main frame. And once that's out, this actually becomes a relatively simple job as far as top ends go. Obviously we'll pull the plug. We will not worry a whole lot about top dead center at this time because we're going to be there pretty quick. The cam and stuff comes up in here. We can see they've already had exhaust issues, judging by the aftermarket hardware. We do have new gaskets for that. We'll go ahead and see if we can get this piece of plastic out of the way. And that'll be that. This was the one that burned oil real bad. We've got a couple of shorts somewhere about it killing mosquitoes and things of that nature. And somewhere there's some footage about how nasty the plug is. So we're going to get to this and see what we can get done today before we freeze, because it is 31 degrees in the shop today. Okay, I lied. The next thing's actually the bed. Thought I had pulled the nuts off here, but apparently I just thought about it. We pull the center one first for the gas strut, and then you're going to go grab these here. Now I will tell you, both of these are because it's been off before, both bolts are coming in from the passenger side. It doesn't make a lot of difference, but for whatever reason it really bothers me. So when I go back in, I'm sure I will put the bolts in either from the inside or the outside, but they'll both be going opposite directions, whichever it is that we choose to do. This is also a great time to be looking at the exhaust, the airbox, stuff like that. We may not have to pull the airbox all the way off, but it's usually only 2 or 4 bolts, and it's a worthwhile thing to do. So I'm going to need like a 10, 12, 14. I think there may be some 13s on this, but we will get to it. We'll pull this bed as an assembly, pull the wiring harness first. As far as before these bolts are out, the wiring harness needs to be out. And then, like I said, the gas strut needs to be off, because if you don't pull the gas strut, and I usually do it at the top because that's where it's easiest, the way it's located down in there, if you don't pull that, you'll bend it at the bottom when you go to, when the bed slides out or falls out or gets lifted off. And then when you bend it, you gotta buy a new one for your customer. So okay, so once again, we're getting started. Pull this up. You can see there's a little shiny thing in there. You could actually pull the bracket, which I may look at doing for the gas strut. Okay, so the bracket's pulled. Just gonna let this go down to where it will. I'll find that bolt here in a little bit. In the meantime, let's move the camera. This is the left side or driver's side bolt. You probably see better than I can because reasons. It's 12 mil on that side. On this side, it is also a 12 mil, which I think I have right here. Yep. Wow, that thing was on there. Last guy put that on wanted it to stay. Now, the other side over here. You can see it right up there. And this is a good time to go ahead and pull that connector. You can see you didn't push the rubber piece back up on it. Now these connectors aren't much fun to begin with. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but the fact that it's cold outside gives it a little bit of an extra pain in the rumpus because it's brittle. All the plastics break easier when they're cold. There was a big ice storm, and you just cannot keep the shop warm like that when there's a big ice storm or a big snowstorm. What you find when you do this stuff, especially if you're like me and you're trying to do it for a living, that you spend a lot of time preparing to work on something. And what I mean by that is you'll spend a huge amount of time getting plastics off and clips and wiring harnesses for lights and things of that nature that really don't have anything to do with replacing the top end except for letting you get to the top end. Now this thing, let's go ahead and finish it off. You can see it was already broke, and I hate that, but it kind of is what it is. So my customers watch these videos, so they usually know if I've messed something up because they see it. In fact, it's broke on the backside too, so they clip. There. Yay, stuff. Okay, so that's loose. So nut there. You'll notice this thing kicked off. The batteries, these bigger batteries, these 4.0s. Try and work loose on the clips. You can adjust them, but it's not. It's not the time to do it when it's cold. You don't want to plastic it. You don't want to mess with the plastic anymore than you have to when it's 30 degrees outside. It is, however, more than a little annoying. Let's see if I can get my knee. These things are tight. They do not have to be quite this tight. That's fun. All right, next step is a breaker bar. This is a snap-on end wrench. I mean, we're not lacking on anything to grip or anything like that. This is just a tight bolt. You'd think with all that hammering, this would just fall right out. It does not. Okay, so this is kind of the bolt nuts off. We're gonna fix to pull the bolts off and then carry this back. Let's get the camera out of the way so I don't smash anything. I'm gonna go through and pull these bolts, but it requires a little bit of kind of up and forward motion here. This other one on this side, I'm gonna have to spin it a little bit to even get it working, because it's better than hitting it on the other threads. See if I can get something in behind it. Pry. You can see that bolt's just, it's that pin, and it's really nasty grease. We're going to fix that, but we slid the end wrench over it, and then while it's spinning, pushed to allow it to come out. When this next one comes, this will be a little bit more of a violent procedure. Yes, the Honda beds are heavy. None of them are super light, but these are big. They got that big steel frame. Because it's steel underpinning on them, but it's not just steel underpinning. It's just a big heavy dude. And over here, this is the e-brake assembly that we pulled off earlier. I told you about that plate. This is the air box. We know it's smoking. We know it's been apart. It does have a really new filter in it, and that's good. We'll go ahead and buzz. Looks like it's just these 3 10 mils. May have some sort of connector at the bottom, but go ahead and buzz those off. It does have a air temp sensor. You can try the connector and it may come off, but if it doesn't, there you go. That whole piece can just push back. As long as you don't beat the snot out of it, you're usually good to use it like that. Vent going in here still. There it goes. And then it goes into the intake. Just stuck it. It's right there for the time being. But I can see it from the side over here. Just pull, it's the boot between box and the intake piping. There's the throttle body, it's stuck. So, not a big deal there. We'll work with a flathead screwdriver. These are actually the gear wrench flathead screwdrivers that have the impact driver ability. If you smack them real good, they'll help stuff come out. That didn't sound like I wanted it to. Now, you have the option when you do this stuff, because it still runs, or it did until just a few minutes ago. I could probably still will, to heat this thing up. That way when you work on it, it's a little warmer. But that means some of the other stuff might be too warm, like the exhaust, too hot to touch. And it's cold enough that I can't feel for sure how warm it is. And I've been known to burn myself doing that. So, all right, I'm gonna get that clamp off there, and we'll pull this whole air box out a little bit and up. I'll have to spin it some, and then we'll have a better view of the engine that way. Oh, Tay, that was real stuck. It was just that piece right there. You can probably see how stuck it was. I mean, it was stuck. So one of them things shouldn't have been that hard, but it was. So here we are. We can't get to much else without pulling that cross piece out. Went ahead and pulled this mostly so we can look at everything, because we know that this machine, the trans was slipping a little bit on it, a lot of bit actually, and it's mostly due to a low fluid level, but we want to give it every opportunity to win when it leaves, because we want it to leave on good terms. And if it's still slipping, it's probably not going to leave on good terms. There's that part of it. And this come. Get that out of the way. All right, now this piece is going to be here. There's nothing we can do about that that won't require cutting and welding. And as there's a fuel tank right there, we're not real wild about cutting and welding. Anything we just absolutely have to, or unless we're getting paid to. So these, come over here a little bit. I just can't see anything else that needs to happen. There's a cable that's here that we're gonna have to move a little bit. Everything else is dependent upon those pieces being moved. So we'll figure out what size those fasteners are and get to it. Okay, so this is a 17 and a 14. 17 on the back, 14 on the front. See the little dancing lights? That's what happens when the battery starts to... It's not giving up, it's just the clips in it are falling off. Okay, so that's out, that's out. Come on. Bung up any threads, but dang. So we'll set these over here. You can't really see if there's a little cubby right there. And then when we get that piece out of the way, we'll slide them bolts back in it. I was thinking these were buy wrench. And I'll get the other side. I already got the pinch bolts on the other side. We're going to throw these back in. We're not going to get them tight, just run them in a few threads so they don't go anywhere special. Because one, you want all these bolts to match if at all possible. And two, it takes a lot of time to find the bolts if they get lost. But if you can't find them, you end up in that situation, you got to go buy them. And I really like our local hardware store, but every time I have to go buy bolts, it's time I don't spend fixing stuff. And it's not incredibly difficult to spend 15 bucks on bolts in a position where, you know, not going to make or break the project, but at the same token, it's not something you want to really deal with anyways, so. Okay, so this is the coil wiring here. See that? Yeah. This is your fuel injector. It's got a line running to it. Throttle cable. So it looks like what we're going to do is just unplug the coil. Be careful you don't break these wires. Coil wires are kind of fragile. And this piece here runs the cylinder head. See if we can just run that. Ouch. And then we'll cut these zip ties that somebody's put on there. If it's a really good factory zip tie, sometimes I will take the time to try and get it right. Release it. Looks like this does have a coolant temp sensor here we're gonna pull off. Set this whole thing off the side and then we'll clean that out because it's got gunk in it. It's hard to see with black gloves, but that whole thing needs to be cleaned out. And this boot's really, really new. And we know what we're doing to fix it, but we want to make sure we've got all the problems figured out first. So going through and seeing that there is some dust and some nastiness in here is a good thing to know as we go here. Just throw the plug wire. You can see it's chill enough that it's just kind of doing its own thing here. There's going to be a couple little bolts here, and the rest just kind of comes out. So these big bolts here, they go all the way through. And we're going to look at draining coolant next. We'll leave the oil in it as long as we can. I do that with a lot of stuff. Why? Well, as long as we don't get a bunch of coolant in the oil, and we're real careful about getting our coolant level down, we can do our first test fire with the old oil, get it warmed up, and then drain the whole thing. So we get all the old oil out. It's not always the most popular, and most of these have roller bearings. It's not a big deal if you do have a little bit of coolant in it. But like the Kawasaki's, Terex's and stuff, they have some standard automotive style bearings, especially in their big end. That's why you don't want to run those at a big angle. And if you get coolant in those bearings, they'll come back and bite you in the butt for it. Little tab, little bitty tab. These things, Honda kind of did their own thing with their early machines, which is fine. Just release some rubber things, and here they are. A good, decent sized radiator. Cap on it, yada yada. We're gonna go through and just remove the cap. Nothing special. Quarter of a turn-ish. It's full. It's not stupid full, but full. Looks pretty decent, looks green. So we'll get a clean pan going and stick it under the middle of the machine. And yeah. All right, got the clamps on where we decided to pull this loosened. They're not off, they're just loose. There's one down here that you probably can't see, and one up here. Just take some pliers. Sure it's good and loose. And there's a pan directly underneath this. I mean, I can see just the edge of it right here. So I've got a pair of clamps here. Just give a snake kiss cable hose down a little bit, because there's a hole down here. The reason we did that is that's not the lowest spot. So a fair portion of the coolant is going to go out that way. As we continue to move other stuff around, continue to move other stuff around, that kind of thing. That's where a lot of it's going to want to go. This is kind of the airlocks release, that nature. And it puts both hoses that I've pulled down below the level of the cylinder, which is what we want. Now we'll need to go ahead and pull the exhaust off. I don't know if you can see that right there. There are two bolts. One looks like it's factory. One looks like it is not. It's got some washers stacked up around it. We get that loose, and looks like it attaches there, comes back around, and has absolutely no other support until it gets back to the back here. So what we'll do is we'll pull those two bolts there, And probably pull these through bolts here, depending on how much flexibility. If there's enough to just kind of push it off to the side, we'll do that. If not, it's just 2 bolts. We don't need to, you know, torque on anything, break anything, that kind of deal. It would be a good opportunity while it's off. It looks like a couple of the clamps. Let's see here. You can see that, maybe. It's clamped in the bottom corner of your screen is on there, but it's kind of loose. Be a good time to go through and make sure the clamps on the exhaust system are where they're supposed to be. So, yeah. We'll go ahead and pull below the radiator, or below the thermostat, there's a line. We'll pull it. It's not going to be much. Yeah, and then they pull all the little 8mm headed bolts and 10mm headed bolts. And then I think those are what, 14mm headed bolts. And these should just be nuts. And we'll pull the whole valve cover off. And we can start to see a little bit better anything that has happened. And the cylinder head will follow shortly thereafter. There are 2 bolts on a mount right there. I think they're 12s, maybe 14s. Those will have to come out. But beyond that, we are just almost there. So this is the initial teardown, and yeah. All right, that's the initial teardown of this MUV700. Like I said, don't have the oil out yet. It's okay. It's fine. It's going to be okay. We can always, the best thing to do really with the oil on these machines, because I can't work all day and I got to go in the house and warm up. The best thing to do is at some point in time, just pull the drain plug and let it run out into your drain pan overnight while the wood stove's going and everything's getting good and warm. So, yes, I am trying to block that light. There you go. Now you can see how, not bald, but it's just the light overhead. It just makes me feel like I'm bald. I can say that because my wife ain't watching. She would flip, I think, if I lost my hair. Yep. And while we're in there, we do need to keep an eye, as I mentioned earlier, on any reason that we can see why this machine might have a delayed engagement or a lot of low RPM slipping. The oil level is too low by far, and that's a big deal with these, but at the same token, anything else that might be done, this is the opportunity while the top end's off. This is an opportunity to get an idea, you know, maybe there's some gasket material that's not allowing pressure to be picked up. It's just clogging some stuff. This is your opportunity to really look hard for that. So we'll do that. Again, this is part 1 of our MUV700 Top End series. I'm going to go inside and get to where I can feel my toes. Thanks for watching.